Hello everyone, it's Linda from LindaZ in Arlington Heights, Illinois. And today it's actually after the 4th, and I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, what's going on with all of this patriotic fabric? Our sale from LindaZ goes until the 10th. And I had a cute little mug rug. Actually, it's bigger than a mug rug. It's enough room for a nice little plate and a cup or a nice juice glass or whatever. And I've had people ask me if I would really show you how to actually do these little mug rugs. And then I actually have found a few more of these. We were giving some of them with our purchase of a machine during our 4th of July sales. And I really wanted them to have a nice little project to start with that isn't too difficult and that I think would really give you a real good sense of what the sewing machine will do and how you can actually do binding, quilt binding on your serger. I've done this for years. I will tell you it's a little difficult when you get up to the corner until this new 890 came out. And now it has a lever, which I'm going to show you real up close, where I can easily change the rolled hem lever to what we call the other. There's an R and an O, and I'll show you that in a moment. And it makes it so much easier to turn your corners. And I think that's where people get into trouble when they're doing binding. And again, think about it. You spent all this time making a quilt, quilting it, piecing it, quilting it, putting it together. And what's the last step? That's my favorite step because I know I'm almost finished. And yet, when you're doing it on a regular sewing machine, it's going to take a long time to get that binding on. It'll cut your time probably in a quarter by doing it on a serger, and it's quick, it's easy, it's fast, and it really turns out beautifully. So there are a couple techniques at the end, so I'm not going to show you I'm just going to show you how I did it on this mug rug, and then you can kind of choose how you want to finish it off. But before we get started, I wanted to show you the actual little kit. And in the kit, there is a backing, there is a binding, and there is a topper, the top fabric. Now, these are actually border fabrics. I love a border fabric anytime you can find them because you can always piece them together. You could go do a quilt as you go seam. But what I did is I put these two strips together. And you can see they're seamed down the middle. And I did that on my regular sewing machine. Now, once I put them together, I use a 1/4 inch foot when I'm doing that. And I would use an Aurifil thread. I think that works the best for piecing on the top and the bottom. And I also do it with a, if I'm doing the quilting on the top, then that's a little bit different weight thread. But on this particular one, you can see the back. Once I did the two strips together, I just put them down. I do pin them because I don't want these areas to shift. And I press it before I pin it because this is actually that Floriani Fuse batting, which their embroidery batting. I love it. For quick little projects like this, you can do it real fast, but you can use your regular batting too. And again, you do it just as if you're making a quilt. You start from the center and you push out. So what I did is I took on my regular sewing machine, I took this wonderful stitch in the ditch foot. You can see how I go right down the center seam. And that's the very first thing for quilting. And the same thread, the Aurifil on the top and the bottom, and look at your stitches. And then I move one over, one over, one over, and one over. And this was very, very simple to quilt because the border gives you the quilt line. So all you do is you follow that stitch in the ditch, that first line. But the second, and I always start on quick little projects like this, and actually on big ones too. I always come back to where I started and continue on, and then I go over here, and then I go over here and over here. But you can see I just followed the border line with this wonderful little, I'm sure most of your machines, you have this little border. It's not a blind hem foot. Nick, I don't know if I can see, I'll put it up close there, you can see it. Do you see how it doesn't go all the way back with that little curve? It's just the stitch in the ditch right in the front, which is really a great little foot for you to be able to follow along and get very, very straight lines. That's what we're looking for, is very straight lines. On this one, I actually did it in white, and you can see they were as straight as you can possibly get. Now, I also took a lot of customers, and especially in my videos, always ask me when I see them, well, what needle did you use? I actually did this on my Bernina 790, the piecing, or I may have done it on my 720, but I did use the Bernina quilting needles. And the reason that I like, and if I'm doing it on my FOP, I use the FOP needles. It's real important, I think, to stay with the needles, especially with Bernina, because it's a precise machine, and that's going to give you an extra little edge because you've got the precision. And this is actually quilting needles. You may have heard me say before, I start with the lowest that I possibly can. This is the 75 pack, and it goes up to 90. Now, if I'm sewing on a 75 and I'm quilting these lines, it's like a ruler edging. It's very simple. I didn't need to use a ruler, but if you're doing row after row, you could the ruler foot. But on here, the 75 needle was perfect. I never broke a thread. It was, it's quick, it's easy, and I know I didn't have to change to the 90. The other thing that I like to do, I just measured to make sure. You can see this one in the middle was about 1.5, 1.5. Then I just went 1.5 and 1.5, and it told me exactly where the lines were going to be. I love this little, and most of you, I'm sure, have this in your sewing gears at home. I'll tell you, I don't have mine with me here, but I like the lighter one because it's a little bit easier to see. And as you get a little bit up there, it's always nice to have a little bit better vision. Another tool that I'm going to tell you about, because I think it's really important for you for when you're doing some of these, is this wonderful tool. I have quite a few of these, but you see the difference? I don't know if they can see when I drop this. Look at what happened. It stopped. And why did it stop? Why didn't it roll right off the table? I mean, there's things here, but why wouldn't it roll off? Because see how it's flat-sided? It's an octagon, so it's flat-sided on one side. If I ever designed a tool, I would always do that because it's so, you're always in a hurry. You put something down, you don't want it to roll off, and then you have to bend down and get it. And it has a little bigger tip on one side than the other. I actually use the smaller size, and I use it when I'm poking out my bindings. So you'll know when I come to that, if I talk about that, this is the tool that I was using. I cut my bindings when I'm doing a little project like this, only 2 inches. I find that the 2.5 is really the standard, but there is no standard. It's what you really like for your bindings. 2.25, I know a lot of people do. I like my bindings kind of a little bit narrow, especially when I'm doing a mug rug like this. And so I used it 2. You could even do it 1 3/4. That would work out really well too. But these I did cut it 2. The last thing I want to show you, and this says a little fabric bowl. You've seen us do things like that before. They're just so fun. But I think this is such a really wonderful little stitch. And it's just a little star stitch. And now on my other rugs that I'm doing at home, I didn't bring them in, and I guess I should have, but we're going to do this whole project in a Serger club, step by step by step by step. I know that sounds elementary for some of you, but it really does help. You've heard me say I myself sometimes have to go back and look at my notes or review my own video because I like to remember how did I do that exactly, and I hope that's what you'll use. But on this particular one, you have that foot that you're guiding, that same foot that I just showed you right here. And you're guiding this along. Now this is after we've got the binding on the quilt or on the mug rug. And on this particular one, I just did it on the wrong side so you could see it, so don't pay attention to the color on this. But I sewed this on the wrong side and I turned it over to the right side, and then I ran the edge of that little stitch in the ditch foot along that binding, and then I put this really sweet little X, looks like a star. And my other ones now, I've taken the variegated threads in red, white, and blue, and I do have a 40 weight in that. You don't want to get it too thin because otherwise it won't show up, but the variegated is just really pretty, especially on a dark blue. All right, I hope that helps while we're going. I do use these little clips, and boy, whoever designed this one, I thought there was no such thing as a better clip, but when you see how this can clip right on here as you're doing your corner, you see how it's so much better than the thicker ones? I mean, it sounds pretty crazy that we are getting into, being that, careful about the points, but it just holds your binding a little bit better, especially in the corners when you're doing, you're putting that binding on. So those are my little tips that I think will help you, because I want you to be able to do these and have fun with them and not think, oh, it's a drudgery or it's a chore, because it's not. It's really, really fun. So let's go right to the serger, and I'm going to show you quickly how to put this binding on the machine. This is a Bernina 890 serger. It is their wonderful new serger that we've all been loving. And you can see what I've done here on the corner. I'll take another one and show you it. Here's another strip. And all I've done, and find the end of this strip, I cut off you can see the salvages on here. So I would cut that off. And then you can see you're going to make a 45-degree angle like this. And what I'm doing here is I'm just pressing it with my finger. You have to be a little careful that you don't stretch that out, because you're on the bias now. But you could take it right to your iron, which my Laura Star over here, and I gave it one little shot of steam, and that's what I have here. So again, that's how you're going to start your point out. It's going to be a little bit different than you're used to with regular quilting. If you didn't want to do this method, there is another method where you can leave it square, and you're going to leave an extra about 10 inches in here. This is a real small little piece, so I think this is the better way. We're going to actually fit the tails inside each other. So let's get started on the actual sewing. I want to show you that I have metrazine thread. Here's something else I want to show you. This I think will help you a lot too. I just love it. I only discovered this a couple of months ago, and I actually own this machine. I know I have 3 different threads on here, and the reason that I do is, quite frankly, I couldn't find all my navy blue, so it's not going to show up. But look at this. Can they see this, Nick, real close? This is Metler thread for serging, and it clamps right onto the spool. It is so cool. It just like it's meant for it, and it is the this color is 0825, and it's the 120 weight thread that we would use normally when we're doing serger. And the other 2, of course, they're going to be fine. I have to use the little, thread holders behind, because you don't want them wobbling around. You want them to be real sturdy. And this one, it's not going to be too bad. Now, the other thing that I wanted to tell you, so if I had all of these, if I had these 3 threads available, I would have put them all the same ones on here. You're threading up your needle, which will be to the left, and that tells you right on the screen. You're going to do a left needle, and it's going to be for overlock, and then you are going to do your upper and lower loopers, and you can see I'm in the yellow, the blue, and the red back here. Now, I have the overlock on the screen, so you can see it's a very easy thing to set up. It tells me that everything is set up the way I want it, and then all I have to do is start sewing. And if you look at this point here with that 45-degree angle, that's where I'm going to start. Be right above it a little bit. And another thing I wanted to show you as I go down here, this the gauge for the width of the zigzag, I'll take this little tray off and you can see it, is 6 millimeters. That's 1/4 of an inch. And that's really what you would want on any serger that you're going to be using. So I'm just going to go down the edge to where my first clip is. And I'm not really cutting off the fabric. I'm just cutting off the edges to make it nice and smooth and finished. That's the part that I love so much about this, that it just keeps it real nice and smooth on the edges. And I don't have all those finished edges. I don't have all those prickly sticking out. So now I'm going to move this. I stopped there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sew off the fabric. And you can see the reason that I'm doing that is I've got a little place here that I'm going to be able to just tuck in. I'll just turn the fabric right now. And when I come around the quilt binding, say this is my very tail at the end, I'm just going to put this. It'll be double folded. It'll be like this, and I'm just gonna slice it right in here, and it will be finished at the very end. You can see, I'll get my threads out of here so you can see what I'm doing, but you see how the reason I leave this open is so that I can put this last tail right in the opening. That's how it finishes off when you're the ending of your mug rug, your binding. So see how nice that is? But I'm not going to do that yet until I get all the way around it. So I just want to show you a corner. I think that'll help you a little bit, because now that I've taken I sewed off the end of the fabric, now what I want to do is fold this over, because you want your binding double folded. And I'll take a I don't really need to put it on with a clip. I can do this pretty easily without it. And I'm going to leave it down to about halfway of where I sewed. You could go right to the end, but this is a smaller piece and it's just a little bit easier to get it going. Now you can see how important it is to put the needle up. You've got a needle up or down, and I'm going to hold it up, and then I'm going to slide this binding in, make sure it's nice and even under your foot, and then right up next to the edge of the knife. I'm not going to have it cut the fabric again. I'm just going to do the edge. So watch, I'll start again. And now in order to know where you're going to finish before you come to the corner, you're going to take one of these little clips. And I put this clip right about the quarter inch before the end. And I'm not going to sew over this clip. All I'm doing is just marking it so you can see it's right there, so I know exactly where to stop. I'm going to go right up to the edge. I'm going to take that off so you can see it. I can tell exactly where it is with my finger. I usually don't use these clips, but I think it's nice to for you to see it. So now I'll put my needle down. And this is the part that's really, really cool. Do you see this little O and R? We call it rolled hem and other. The rolled hem is this is a lever that you can set up for rolled hems. We have it on other right now. The reason that you want this to have rolled hem is because I want that stitch finger to come off, so I can now flip this to rolled hem. And if this was, I'm going to take this off of here so you can actually see what's going on. In fact, I'll just sew off again. That's the great part about this, is that you can do that. And you see here, if I take this off, and this is just to be able to show you, there's a little lever here. Now this is what we call the stitch finger, and you see there's thread on there right now because it's on the other. If I put watch when it happens when I go to the rolled hem. I'm going to bring the rolled hem lever back. Oh, that lever just disappeared. And now the thread is not there, and it'll allow me to pull the fabric out very easily and turn it. So watch again, that's the way with the stitch finger on other. That's the way I'm going to sew when I do my overlock across the over the edge of the regular sewing. But when I come down to the corner and I get to that quarter inch before I finish and flip the stitch for the corner, I'm going to just flip it back to rolled hem. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to raise my foot. I'm going to pull this off, and it'll be real easy to pull it out, because that way, I'm going to put my needle up so it's easy to get it. See how easy that is to pull out right now? And that's why these little tricks are so easy. Now when I start sewing again, I'll put it back to other, because of course I want the overlock stitch on there. Let me put this all back together here for you, but I hope that helps. Got it on other. And I'm going to click this back in there for you. And then this is going to go up here. There we go. Now, when I go ahead and come down the edge, I'll just trim off that little part where I went off, because I don't really need it. That's what's great about these little catchers. I love this little thing. I don't know what I'd do without it. And I'll just go right up again to where I started, or where I went off. Again, I know with my finger that I'm going to go to about a quarter inch here. So I have to keep going. And then I come up to where that quarter inch is. Leave your needle up at that point. If you have it down, just touch it so it'll go back up. Now I'm going to flip that to rolled hem, and watch what happens to that little stitch finger. Click, and it disappears, because now there's no thread at all over the stitch finger. So I can easily raise my foot, bring it out. See how easy that was to turn? And now what I can do, I can take my fabric, my binding, and I can bring it right straight to the back. And I'm going to give it a little 45-degree angle. Do you see where there's that 45-degree angle right there? Just press it with your finger. And now I'm going to bring it back down, and the fold is going to be right where the seam edge is that I just went over. There's not going to be any stitching on it right now on the binding, but I've got the 45-degree angle under there. I flipped it to the back, and now I'm going to flip it to the front like I have right now. It's folded. And then I'm going to go right up next to my blade. I'm not going to actually, again, cut the blade. I'm just cutting all these little fuzzies off. And then what I'm going to do is release my foot so that it'll go right over there. And you will see the nicest, I can see it. I sometimes like to take a little stylist. I don't have one with me today, but it's really nice to do that where you've got that. See how I bring that with that scissors, how I brought it right up to the edge. So I'm going to do it again. Get it nice and firm up to the edge. And then you have that nice little 45-degree angle there. Now I'll go ahead and release my foot. But what else do I have to do? Those of you who have done this before, you know, right away you're going to press that back to other because I'm not doing a rolled hem. If I would leave that on rolled hem, it would start to do a rolled hem. And I want to have this nice overlock stitch that's going along all the way down to the next corner. I'm going to do the same thing on the next corner and the next, all the way around. But before I do that, I want to show you. See how nice that's going to be? That little mitered corner, it'll fold right to the back, and you'll have a little mitered edge right there. And then I can finish it off with my stitching like I showed you earlier. See how nice that is? It's going to fold right here and here. It's a nice tight little binding that's just perfect because of the way that you're doing it. Let me do one more corner, and then I think you will get the hang of this. And if you don't, sign up for those Serger clubs and you'll see it step by step. So I'm going to go, see if you got it now. I'm going to go up. Now, what would I do normally, right? I'd mark a little 1/4 inch or with your finger exactly where 1/4 inch, and you're going to bring right up to where the sewing edge is. Now you have this stitch finger here, and you don't want it to be on other right now. You want to bring it back to rolled hem because that released the foot and released the thread. And now see how nice I can turn this? And then what I can do is I can take this folded binding, flip it to the back, and what do I want? A nice 45-degree angle. And again, I've done this quite often, so I don't usually, but I'll tell you, the stiletto is really nice to have there, or a stylist if you have that too. But if you don't, and you're like what I'm doing right now, you want to keep these two edges together. You can use your scissor, and you want that fold. See how nice and tight that is right up to the fold line? Want to make sure it doesn't go below it. It goes right up to it. And you're going to get those two pieces of binding together. I don't like what I see here because I'm seeing that the fold is down just a little bit more. So I'm going to bring it up just a touch, and then I know that that binding is going to look really good. So again, I'm going to bring it over to the knife. I'm not going to cut the binding. I'm just cutting the little squiggly things off of there. I have this knee lift lever, and I'm going to bring it back a little bit so I can start right there. Now, what else do I have to do? Those of you that know what I've been saying. Right, you're going to move that lever to other. You're going to do an overlock now. It's going to go right over the stitch. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then you're going to do the same thing all the way around your binding, here, here, and here. And then again, when you come to the end, you're going to have this piece folded. It's going to go in here. Remember, you're going to have all these corners sewn now. See how I flip it in there? And just fold this piece in half. Just cut it off if it is too long. You want to make sure you have given yourself a little bit of extra room. And now that is going to be sewn right over. You're going to go right over here and here, and you'll be finished. And you'll be able to flip it over. I don't hand hem this. You could, but there's no reason to it. It won't come out, believe me. So I hope that gives you some really good techniques and ideas. The little miters on these corners are just wonderful. And remember, um, I think I showed you earlier, this is a really good little wonderful piece to show you the little stars. If you happen to have some of those variegated threads that I talked about, I would encourage you to get them because it will be just great in red, white, and blue, or in any color if you're doing a holiday. Don't have to do the 4th of July. But if you are, and again, I'm going to be giving some wonderful kits out for those of you that are purchasing machines here before the July 10th. Don't forget, we have luminaires on sale. We have long arms on sale. We have the Genomes on sale. We have Juki. We have Brother, the icons for Thoth. We have, I know there's an Epic, just some great, great buys. So hope it really, really helped you. Fabrics, all kinds of things. Oh, furniture too. Thank you for reminding me, Nick. Okay. All right, guys. I know I'm sounding like a salesman here, and I don't mean to be because I really wanted you to get this technique. So those of you that aren't quite sure what I did, replay it. That'll help you. Or I hope you're signed up for our clubs. The Serger Club, we're going to do a step by step by step. I believe it'll be in September. Thanks everyone for your patronage and joining us. I just love your comments. Enjoy the day, and we will see you next week.